Like I said, I want to investigate why router 3 does not receive the external routes here. And if you look at this topology, there is an interesting point here. You can see that router 1 is the ASPR that is doing the redistribution. Router 3 is ASPR as well. Router 3 has OSPF process and EIGRP process. What does this mean? This means that router 3 prefers to use OSPF routes to reach the OSPF area and EIGRP routes to reach the EIGRP area as router 1 does. So if router 3 uses external routes to reach the OSPF, that means it is going to use this way to go to OSPF area, and this is suboptimal. So this is the reason that router 3 does not have any external routes in itself. And of course it doesn't need, because it has both of these processes running on itself. But backbone 1 needs to have the routes. So let's go to backbone 1 again and check the OSPF, check the routing table and see if there is something here. You can see that backbone 1 does not have every route enabled here, and this is because backbone 1 receives the routes from router 3, and router 3 has an EIGRP neighborship with backbone 1, so it sends only EIGRP routes to backbone 1. So this is one point that you can see the problems. Router 3 does not have redistribution enabled, but router 1 has, and because router 1 has, backbone 1 cannot reach any routes. So I can do this in two ways. I can remove the redistribution from router 1 and go to router 3 and do it here, but here I have a low speed connection here, or I can have redistribution enabled between the 2 points and have them enabled. So I'm going to have redistribution in 2 points, on router 1 and on router 3. So what happens if I do this? If I redistribute routes from OSPF to EIGRP on router 1, some routes may go to router 3 and come back to OSPF. So that will yield a suboptimal routing. But this doesn't happen because OSPF prefers internal routes over external routes, and EIGRP has an administrative distance of 170 that stops it from using external routes instead of internal routes. So these two protocols do not have any problem with this. But sometimes if you want to make sure you can have tagging enabled between the two protocols, and I want to show you how you can do this. So I go to router 3 and go to configuration mode, and on router EIGRP 100 I redistribute OSPF 1, and I need to have a metric, or I can have define the default metric previous to this and use this. So let's do this way. This is going to be bandwidth, this is going to be delay, reliability, load, MTU. For example, I use these as default metric, and after that I can have redistribute OSPF 1 without any other things, and you can see that redistribution is going to be done because now I have a default metric defined, and it will be applied to every redistribution that I'm using here without a metric keyword. So I go to router OSPF 1 here and redistribute EIGRP 100 subnets and hit enter. That's it. Now I have redistribution. Let's go to backbone 1, see what happens after this redistribution. I can see that everything is there. I have reachability to everything. Now this is one problem that is solved. But if you are not sure about the route looping, and I'm not sure about looping, I want to enable tags on my redistribution, and this is very good strategy in such places that you have another, for example, area or another process in middle, and your routes go through that process and again come back to another process. This is a good place to enable tagging. I want to have this, supposing that there is some other, autonomous system or some other protocol in my in between me and EIGRP. So I'm sure that definitely my routes will loop to myself again. So to do this, I can go to router 1 and create a route map, and I name it OSPF into EIGRP. So any route that I send to EIGRP, I want to make sure that it is tagged with 110. So I make this permit, for example, 100, and I set a tag of 110 to any route that goes to EIGRP. So I make sure that my routes are tagged, and later I will check for tag and make sure that this is not coming into my process, because I don't want to have redistribution, and I don't want to have these my routes redistributed to myself. So I have this, and if I go to, let me check the running config section, router EIGRP. Here I have redistribution, so I go to router EIGRP 100, and here I add this route map in the end and select the name and put it here. This tells me that any route that goes to EIGRP, actually I am EIGRP, any route that I am adding to my database from OSPF process, I'm going to tag it with 110. So I hit enter. Oh, let me see if there's something here. There is a match. I don't want to use it. So this is the running configuration that I just have here. Okay, now I have tagged it. The only thing that I need to make sure is whenever I'm redistributing from EIGRP, I'm not going to let these routes in. So I create another route map, EIGRP into OSPF, and the permit 100 is here. And here I want to, of course this is not permit 100, let me disable this. I want to deny it actually, so I deny it instead of permitting, because I don't want to let the route come in. So I match tag, and if I see 110, I won't let this route come in. So now let me show the running config of section router OSPF, and here I can see that I have a redistribution like this. So I go to router OSPF and go to redistribution, and here I add route map EIGRP into OSPF. So I hit enter, and that's it. Now I make sure that any route that is tagged 110 cannot come into OSPF process, because when redistributing, I sent any route with 110 tag to EIGRP. Now that's it. So let me check the running config section route map and see the route maps, and I can change route maps to reflect the same thing on EIGRP. You can see that I have implemented them just for OSPF and I haven't had this for EIGRP. I can do this the other way. So if I go to route map OSPF to EIGRP and have here, I want to, let me do this, route map OSPF to EIGRP, deny, for example, 50, because this is going to be before this line, and because this is OSPF to EIGRP, I want to make sure that my EIGRP routes that I have sent to OSPF process is not coming back to me. So here I need to match tag 90, because I want to set tag 90 when sent into OSPF, and that's it. and the route map EIGRP to OSPF. I need to have a parameter of, for example, 200. I want to make sure that deny is processed first, so I set tag 90. Now I have these route maps here. Let me check the route maps again. Show run section route map. These are the route maps that I just created. Route map OSPF to EIGRP. First things denies the routes that have the tag of 90. That means I don't let the EIGRP routes come back to me. And then I send any route to EIGRP. And let me see. Yes, that's correct. I'm not sending any EIGRP to EIGRP process, but I am tagging any OSPF routes with 110, and in EIGRP to OSPF I'm not sending any routes that is already tagged with 110, and of course I'm tagging any EIGRP with 90. I will copy the exact route maps to the other point of redistribution, that is going to be router 3. So I hit enter here, paste all of these here, and the other piece is this. I change the OSPF redistribution, router 3, router EIGRP 100, and this is the route map that I just added here, and write router OSPF 1. I copy this, and now I have redistribution on router 3 as well, and any route that is coming or going is going to be tagged or being stopped based on the tag that is here. Now I make sure that I will have no loops if I have another autonomous system or another protocol in between me and the other one, and my routes will not loop back. But if you have only these two areas that are adjacent to each other, and there is no other areas, or there is no protocol in between, there is no harm leaving the route map and just enable the simple redistribution, because OSPF and EIGRP have their own loop removal procedures, and there won't be any loop in this topology. But I just showed you, if you are in doubt, you can have tagging enabled and do this. So if I check the running config of section router EIGRP again, I want to show you what happens here. You can see that, of course, this default metric is not necessary here, because I added the metric here, but you can see that I redistributed, and I use the route map for redistribution that changes the behavior of redistribution, and on OSPF I did the same thing and changed the behavior.